bonsoir. On est en France et on est français, mais we decided we're going to speak English tonight because people will be watching from several different countries. What you just heard, but before I start, I must introduce Samuel Boré. And Samuel, tell people a little bit about how we got to know each other and the projects we've done together before.
Bonsoir. Forgive my very bad English. Mon anglais très 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 mauvais. I think we met the first time in 2012. I'm artistic co-director of a musical group, Ensemble Offrande in Le Mans, and we have invited you many times in Le Mans in La Fonderie, the place where we are working, and we made some concerts and lectures with you, which have been successful. We commissioned a new piece, the Seven Septets, the 7 Septuor, pour tes 77 ans, your 77th birthday, and it was played many times in Le Mans, in Rennes, Saint-Nazaire, and Alençon, and so on. Also, as a pianist, I play often your music, your piano music. For example, an harp for piano, chord catalog, counting keys, and so on. I like your music.
Well, good. He's very modest. He forgot to mention he's a wonderful piano player. And he's one of the few people in the world who can play the chord catalog, which takes a lot of work. We're here tonight to present for the first time, 12 years later, which is a piece of 2020. But it comes from a piece that was 12 years earlier, which was called 12. And in fact, you heard one movement from this as the introduction. But what you didn't know is that what you were hearing is a block design, a mathematical structure, which is, you can't figure it out yourself, but a good mathematician can do it. All you have to do to make a 12-4-3 block design is pick 12 elements, put them in blocks of 4, such that 2 elements appear in 3 different blocks. Did you get that? If not, let's put it in musical terms. You take the 12 notes, you put them in 4-note chords, such that each pair of notes appears in 3 different chords. And that's how, in order to solve this problem, you have to have a system of 33 chords, and that's what you were listening to just at the beginning. Chunk, 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 all around the circle. And by the end, you had heard each note 11 times. You heard the 33 chords that complete this block design, and you heard each pair of notes 3 times in one of these chords. And that's kind of amazing symmetry for me. And this is what got me interested in wanting to write music that came directly from these block designs. Of course, people think they know 12-tone music as something that was invented by Arnold Schoenberg 100 years ago. It was a big movement for a while, increased its volume until the 60s, 70s, when it kind of peaked out with the best works of the movement probably by Nono and Stockhausen. But then it kind of declined, and in the 21st century, I don't know a single composer who is still writing serial music. That Schoenberg tradition was serial 12-tone music. What I'm doing is 12-4-3 block design music. Now that you know a little bit about how this piece music was created, and maybe you can appreciate the mathematics, We're going to play it again, and this time you can try to hear that with each 3 chords, tunk, 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 you have heard all 12 notes once, and then with the next measure, chunk, 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 you've heard all 12 notes in another way. Play it again. Sam? There were 3 notes, 3 chords left over. We had to put them at the end. The next piece, the first piece, now we're doing 12 years later. Oops. And this one is called, here it is, Originals and Copies. This is a 12/4/3 block design also, but quite different than the simple design you saw before. In this case, you're just looking at the pairs of notes, and 3 pairs in the middle are particularly important: 2, 6, 1, 5, and 3, 4. And each one, that makes 3 chords: 2, 6, 1, 5, 1, 5, 3, 4, and 3, 4, 2, 6. And if you follow the red line, you can find that 1, 5, 3, 4 repeats itself here with 1, 4, 3, 5. But if you follow the long line, it also goes up here through other pairs, pair, and here, 1, 3, 4, 5. The same chord. It's just the pairs are different. If you follow the green lines or the blue lines, you find 2 other chords, originals, that go to 2 copies. And that's what this piece is about, that Sam is going to play now. You're going to hear chord, first copy, chord longer, route to the second copy. Second chord, first copy, second chord, second copy, etc. I hope you could hear the similarity between the originals and the copies. Many people think they don't want to hear explanation about music, they just want to hear music. But I've always found that I appreciate music a little better if I understand a little bit about how it was composed. And that's why, especially with my music, I like to try to explain a little bit. The next piece is called Samson's Solution, because it came from a that's the wrong it's this one. From an English mathematician named Paul Samson, and he found this solution. It's another 12/4/3 block design with 22 chords on the outside and 11 blue chords on the inside. We're going to start by listening to the red chords on the outside each of which contains note 11, which is the highest note. We don't always count 1 to 12. Sometimes it's 0 to 11 in this case. So you hear 11 chords that have the 11, that has the high notes on top. Then we hear the blue chords in the middle, where there's no common tones between one chord and another. It jumps, jump, 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 jump. And then to end, we hear the green chords around the outside, where there's one note in common with each chord. So you hear between one chord and the other the common tone. Another visual aid for the next piece, which is called Close Harmonies. Paul Denny, a mathematician in New Zealand, sent me a block design a long time ago, where it's possible to make, in many ways, 3 chords with only 6 notes. Each one of these triangles is a case where 3 of the chords happen with only 6 notes. Sometimes a chord will occur in 2 or 3 groups, but the chords, when you have the notes repeated like that, it's kind of dense harmony, and I decided to put it on a dense scale. Usually I prefer scales where the notes are rather far apart, then you get to not so many close clusters and the notes are more spaced. But in this case I decided to stack them all into 1 octave, and that's why the harmonies get very close. By the way, it's very important when you just try to translate numbers into notes, you better think about the scale, because that's going to give you the sound that you're going to have. And in this we have a special sound which is very good for close harmonies. We had to put a few of the chords at the end in just groups of 2 and 1 because they didn't fit into groups of 3. And we wanted all 33 chords to be represented. The next piece is called 11 times 3. I asked a combinatorialist, block design specialist in London named Leonard Soicher, who helped me a lot with this recent work in 2020. I asked him, is there a way that I can take 1 pair of notes and then do the 3 pairs that go with them, and then another pair of notes and the 3 pairs that go with them, and continue this 11 times until I have had all 33 chords. in a nice, neat bundle. Well, he has a lot of experience, and the next day he sent it to me, and this is the music that came out. The sustained notes are sustained, and the other notes, the added notes, are short. A little comparison with the old 12-tone music. The old 12-tone music was much more free because you could put F sharp in any octave you wanted, and you could repeat notes as many times as you wanted, and you could cheat as much as you wanted. It was pretty flexible. If you want to really work with numbers in a serious way, as I do, it's a very rigorous art, and you want, like in this case, exactly 33 chords. You know octave changes, and everything is quite precise if you want to follow the numbers and be serious about it. Another piece that I find very serious is called tremulos, and this comes from a problem. Leonard Seutzer told me that there's no way to do a 12-4-3 block design such that the 33 chords can be put in a line where it's just one note changing with each new chord. But Frank Jedzewski, an old friend and a colleague who wrote recently Heterotopie Musicale, very good book, very serious for musical mathematics. He's not a block design specialist, but he did one for me. And he couldn't, Seutzer was right, he couldn't do all 33 chords in one by one like that. But he got 22 chords in a way that could change just one note at a time until you got through this 22. It's only 22 of the 33 chords, but it seems like a complete system because it's all the possibilities you could do with that. And it's very nice to hear these chords as tremulos because they just change one note at a time. They kind of morph into one another. Music sounds easy when you hear it well played like that, but I have a feeling that Samuel probably worked harder on that piece than on most of the others to get it so subtle, the changes so even and subtle. Beautiful work. The next piece comes from the standard book, sort of the encyclopedia of combinatorial design. It's called the Handbook of Combinatorial Design by Diminished Chords. It's a 1,000-page book with contributions from about 50 mathematicians all over the world. One design, the main design that he gives in this book as an example is a set like the first one in 12, where you get sets of all 12 notes in 3 chords, one after the other after the other. But I decided to take these and just listen to one note at a time and make melodies of 12 notes. So each melody has 12 notes, 3 chords. But I love Louis Couperin, and so does Samuel. Samuel, tell us about this 17th century composer and how this 21st century music is going to relate to him.
Yeah. Louis Couperin est comment on dit, le nephew of François Couperin.
The oncle. I think it was the uncle of the great Couperin le Grand.
But Couperin le Grand, moi je pense c'est Louis le Grand vraiment.
Yeah, for me too.
I prefer Louis Couperin. It's very free music, very, very fantastic and very special. And I like to play Louis Couperin at cembalo. And you made a tribute to Louis Couperin. And it sounds like a dodécaphonique unmeasured prélude, un prélude mesuré dodécaphonique. Voilà. Enfin, un prélude non mesuré dodécaphonique.
Well put. you just hold the notes down like a good harpsichord player when they're supposed to be held down, and let them move into the next note, and then you end the phrase where always the notes all seem to resolve into one chord, the way Louis Couperin did it. And it works pretty well on piano, I think. The next piece is comes from a block design I didn't know quite what to do with. And I thought, well, I'm not sure what the logic really is. Why don't I just take the chords, start with the lowest one and end with the highest one, and do them in sequential order, the way they come off the computer. And I found out that the last chord came twice. I said, there must be a mistake. I looked at my program. No, it was not a mistake. And then I realized this is a block design of Ted Spence, a mathematician in Glasgow, who thinks that it's okay to make a block design with one repeated chord, as long as the pairs arrive 3 times, as they're supposed to and everything. And I realized that this was expressed. And it was curious that the one repeated chord happened to be the highest chord, and it made a very nice ending, which seemed to be the destiny of this piece, which I call Rising with Spence. These are just ordinary chords, 4-note chords, combinations of notes according to a mathematical formula. But you probably never heard any of these chords before. There's so many combinations possible. And I find that mathematics can open us up to so many new sounds. And that's one of the things that excites me the most about working in this way. Now we're going to do something that is due to Leonard Soicher again. He makes block designs often with permutations. If you do the right permutation, you can permute one block into another block and continue doing this. And every block in the block design will permute to another block in the block design. And finally, you can permute all 33 blocks, one with the other. I did this in 3 different ways in the following piece. First of all, I took a Soicher permutation that was just pairs of notes. 1 permutes to 2, permutes to 1, 3 permutes to 4, permutes to 3, and so forth. And the second one is it goes in cycles of 3. 1 permutes to 2, permutes to 3, permutes to 1, and so forth. And the next one it goes in cycles of 4. So you get very chromatic, simple changes in the first piece, cycles of 3 in the second piece, and cycles of 4 in the third piece. And I changed the scale with each movement so that you could hear a little better the individual voices moving through their cycles. Simon, we never talked about this before, but I have the feeling tonight that you play this piece with more rubato than you usually do. Something about that chromatic harmony that wants to make little nuances, don't you think? You weren't conscious of that?
No.
Well, anyway, lots of things that we're unconscious of in music. I don't know if the listeners were hearing that or not. Now we're going to do another permutation, which is quite different. And this came from Soicher also, but this time he sent me one permutation, 12 numbers long. Exactly 1, 7, 9, 2, 8, 10, 3, 5, 11, 4, 6, 12. And 12 permutes back to 1, and it's a circle. So you can look at this 12 numbers as a 12-tone row, but it's not a 12-tone row at all. It's a permutation series. And these notes are going to permute according to that series. I wanted to make that as clear as possible, so I make it a canon. Everybody starts with note 1, but they don't start at the same time. When the fourth voice enters, you're going to have a 4-note chord because they're set up so that they start at the right time. We're going to hear, after the fourth voice comes in, the pedal goes down so that you can hear chord by chord. And after 12 chords, we do another canon that leads to 12 more chords, another canon that leads to 6 more chords, and then another canon that leads to the remaining 3 chords. 12 plus 12 plus 6 plus 3, and voila, 33 chords. Another design of Leonard Soicher permutes the blocks in cycles of 4, exactly da da dee dum. But then there's another cycle da da dee da, and a third cycle on another transposition. And I did this in 3 different ways. The first way, I let you hear. It's just 3 chords that repeat over and over. But I sort of insert the melodies to help you hear that within these 3 chords, you're just hearing these da-da-dee-da melodies circulating against one another.
It's like a round.
Yeah.
But kaleidoscope.
A kaleidoscope, yeah. Good analogy. shall I explain 4-cycle B as well? And we'll do this all as one set. The second part of this, which we call 4-cycle B, is just the chords without paying too much attention to the da-da-dee-dum themes. Now you can hear those within the chords if you listen carefully. And then in 4-cycle C, I just put the chords in numerical order, just so that you can listen to the chords for their own sonority, and without worrying about the counterpoint, which isn't there anymore. And this time in 4-cycle C, Samuel plays them with a different rhythm, which makes them, I think, easier to hear as sonorities. could hear the music of the spheres that they thought in the Middle Ages was music out there because the planets were rotating in perfect synchronization, making music as they rotated, and they imagined that this music was out there making the Earth go around. It's a nice idea, but I never could hear it. But sometimes, like in this last piece, I think I'm hearing music from mathematical spheres. Those mathematics are out there. That's part of the natural world, just as much as oxygen and earthworms and flowers. They're out there. Those mathematics are turning around out there somewhere and are making music. Mathematical spheres. Anyway, just something to think about. We have a visual aid again for the next piece, which I call Slow Changes. We start with this chord. I think it's a 110, 11, 12 is here. And then we go to this chord, which is quite different, and then to this chord, which is quite different. Then we go this one, this one, and this one, this one, this one, and this one. You'll notice the 12 is always in the center circle. So there's always the high note 12 in the beginning, in the first and last chord of each three-chord measure. As the chords go, there's always two notes in common. 1 and 10 is retained here, and then 7, 6 is retained here, and then 7 and 9 is retained here, and then 4, 9 is retained here, as the lines show. So it's just slipping a little bit, just moving a couple notes at a time as we go gradually around the circle in slow changes. She sent me another block design, which permits us to listen to the 33 chords without ever having a note repetition from one chord to the next. It's always 4 new notes, 4 new notes, 4 new notes. For reasons that you will probably hear, we call the piece flip-flop. Important composition teacher was Morton Feldman, with whom I worked for a year, just after finishing the Yale School of Music. And he was very different from me in the sense that he didn't like systems at all. He wanted to, the only way to write music is sit down at the piano and listen, 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 and until it sounds right, and then write it down. And don't ever try to systematize. Well, I worked the way he wanted me to for a while, but my instinct was to go back to system. I had to know what I was doing and to analyze what I was doing. I had an analytical mind somehow. And he told me later, I knew you were going to do it, but it was good for you to work just by ear for a while. And sometimes it's still good for me just to work by ear. So I decided to write two pieces with which I call by ear 1 and by ear 2. I just took a block design I didn't know what to do with, and just sat at the piano the way Feldman did, and just listened. And I found that the chords seemed to fall into groups of 4 that sounded kind of similar, went together. And then another group of 3 that sounded similar, went together. And I ended up with a group of 4 and a group of 4 and a group of 3. Group of 4 and a group of 3, 4 and a group of 3. Group of 4 and a group of 4 and a group of 3. And that made 33 chords. And the grouping seemed to make sense. It was just by ear, but it worked as a block design, as a 33 chord block design, a 12-4-3 block design. But then I thought, but would this work if I changed the scale? So I took exactly the same numbers and wrote it out on another scale, and that gives us by ear 2, and which you'll see are the groupings as convincing in the second piece as in the first piece. We'll see.
But tell me, by ear, the opening of this piece reminds me of a very famous tango. Listen.
Yeah. Well, that was not conscious on my part. Those 3 chords, but maybe that's why those 3 chords went, well, those 4 chords went together, because unconsciously I was hearing Beethoven. My ear 2 doesn't have the Beethoven, but I think I like it better. It's a nicer scale. And I think the groupings still work.
Yeah.
The groups of 4 seem to fit together. The next movement is called Quasi-Diminished. And this is another set of permutations as it came from Seutzer, 4 cycle permutations. But I set the scale with 4 diminished chords, and with a major second between one and the next diminished 7th, and it gets You don't hear real diminished sevenths until the very end, but it kind of has a quasi-diminished sound the whole time. And lovely chords come off of this scale. Almost any numbers you plug into it. Let's listen to Quasi-Diminished. That time we got 4 major phrases, 7 times, plus 2 chords that came together, plus the 3 diminished sevenths, and we got 33 chords that way. There's quite a few other pieces that we're not going to present tonight, but I think we thought this is enough for first evening. The complete edition, we hope, will be available in 2 or 3 weeks. For tonight, we're going to just play one more piece. This is a block design where you can put 8 chords together that have a lot of pairs in common. And if you kind of rhyme the pairs, you put them, first and third chord have the same pair, and the second, fourth chords, and whatever. You kind of rhyme the pairs in such a way that when you get to the 4th measure, you finish a quatrain that seems to have rhymed with what went before. So I continued with many sets of 8 chords that seemed to have a lot of pairs in common, and made this piece, Quatrains, which is going to be the end of our concert.
The first time I played the piece for you, every 4th bar you laugh.
That's true, I remember that. Yeah. I don't know why.
It reminds me of what Gilbert Delors said about your music.
What did Gilbert Delors say?
It's the meeting between rationality, mechanic and humor.
Yeah. Well, Delors is a special sensatier, and he loves the sport divertissement, which he thinks is very amusing because they're little machines that turn.
Here,
sort of like animated comics. The rabbit is going like a machine, and he's funny that way. Anyway, I don't know if you will find this funny or not, but let's listen to the quatrains as poetry. Thank you. We need to thank a lot of people tonight, especially David Tepfer, who's been doing the camera and the sound technicians and everything. A wonderful man and an old friend that I appreciate a lot. And of course all the mathematicians whose names I've already mentioned. And of course all the people who are out there listening somewhere and watching and maybe asking questions. Are there questions? If there are, somebody is on the chat box there and can tell me if there's any questions that we need to answer.
Just one question, and it is, how do you transfer the systems of chords to score?
How do I what?
How do you transfer the
the scores. Well, there's interesting, there's a very clever software called Lilypond, which is free, but very difficult to learn. You have to be a real programmer. And I never learned it. At my age, I'm too old to learn new programs. But I have a colleague, Valentin Villeneuve, who's also my webmaster for edition 75. And he's very good with Lilypond. And he has done several scores where he can just program the numbers and it comes out beautiful music. But I still work with Finale, where you have to plug in the notes note by note, but it makes beautiful scores too. It just takes longer, and you make mistakes because it's human errors with every note, and there's no, you can't just feed the numbers into the program. But I do a lot on paper too. Sometimes I just read off the numbers and write them on music paper in the old-fashioned way. And while I'm taking it then to the piano and deciding for the by ear, for example, I had to just write the chords out and go to the piano and start trying to put them in groups on paper, because you can't have a piano and the computer at the same time. But that's okay. We don't need more questions.
Yes, please. Peut-être juste, en tout cas, là je vais le dire en français puis tu vas pouvoir traduire, mais voilà, que depuis le mois de juin, donc Tom m'envoie de nouvelles pièces sur ce cycle, donc vous en avez eu un petit aperçu ce soir, et on espère bien pouvoir jouer l'intégralité du cycle 12 Years Later, peut-être en diptyque avec le cycle original 12, donc dès qu'on sera un petit peu sorti de l'étrange situation qu'on traverse tous en ce moment. Donc tenez-vous informés sur le site de l'ensemble offrant par exemple ou auprès de David Tepfer, mais normalement donc on espère bien pouvoir donner bientôt l'intégralité du site.
Well, yeah, he's saying that we should be able to have the complete thing ready for a while, and one day we're going to be able to do concerts in real concert halls again with real publics, and that'll be wonderful. And then probably other pianists will want to play this music too, and we can do real concerts with or without the narration and explanation. I think the music will stand so well by itself too. A lot of people are going to say, "Oh, I was sick that night. I need to give you the podcast." I'm not sure that we're going to be able to arrange the podcast, at least not immediately. We'll see how that works down the line. But the important thing is just that we get the score out, and that it can be performed in real concert halls by real pianists with real publics further in the future. This is a real public tonight, I'm sorry, but small. We're limited with the confinement period. But thank you for coming, those of you, 5 of you in the audience.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.